Can I retire now? That's one of the biggest questions I find that people have. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the powerful 7-step process we take our clients through so they can understand whether now is the right time for them. Take some notes because this may be one of the most important videos that I've done on this channel. But before we get there, subscribe to my channel, hit the notifications bell. I've got over 30 years experience to share with you, and I want to make sure that you get the most from it. So I'm going to take you inside the conversation of a client who was 66 years old, had $800,000 of investments, and really wanted to know, could he retire right now? It's important to know right now, I'm going to state it right up front, that while you were working, you can think about your investments in one particular way. I'll get to that. But when you go to retire, I think our industry's done a lousy job of helping you to understand how to think about properly planning for your retirement. And it's not just about investing. And this is why I wrote my most recent book, Don't Outlive Your Money in Retirement, 7 Key Steps, which chronicles the 7-step process that we take our clients through. I just thought it was so important, given the lack of information, the lack of financial literacy and awareness people have as they go through retirement, to give them a guide, a tool, so they don't make the mistakes that could cost them the retirement dreams they've been dreaming of for many, many years. So I want to start this journey with you so you can answer the question, which is, are you on track to retire now, or are there adjustments you need to make? And it is the powerful 7-step process we take our clients through that answers that question for them. So let me set the stage for you. As John and Jane were both 66 years old, and approximately $800,000 in overall investments, about $500,000 in their 401k, another $300,000 in a joint taxable account. And they defined their cash flow need on an annual basis of being $60,000. So step number 1, as we chronicle in the book, is define your income needs. Or in other words, it really does beg the question, the big fear, that I don't want to outlive my money. Now that fear is not investing well or not getting, the most for my money management. It's making sure I have enough income for the rest of my life. And a part of what we do, the first step here, is to understand health issues as it relates to life expectancy. And we start with the assumption that he's going to live to about the age of 90 and she's going to live to about the age of 92. She typically outlives him, so say the life expectancy tables. And we want to make sure that even if you think you're not going to make it that long, we want to make sure that we plan in such a way that we cover a margin of error. If you do live too long, that you do have that income later on. If you do pass earlier, then that problem has been solved. But if we plan for you being just 82 or 84 or 85 and you live longer, that's not a good scenario. We want to make sure in terms of life expectancy, we understand what the health situations are, make a reasonable assumption, and we start with the numbers of 90 and 92. Then you may be surprised that step 1 is about income needs. Because again, our industry has just focused primarily on money management. But as you now go into this next chapter of life, it is the income that you need that will provide and give you guidance in terms of how much risk you need to take on the portfolio. So you need to make sure that you fill out a cash flow worksheet, which we provide to every client. You can Google that as well, and fill it out. I would suggest to you that typically most people plan for perfect. In other words, they don't do a what if scenario, or, it's like, we know we do this, but life always happens. So one of the suggestions I make to my clients and I make to you is maybe add another 10% on whatever that number is that you come up with for your cash flow need, and then put that into play. Step number 2 is maximize your Social Security. There's 567 different claiming strategies. And you need to make sure, particularly in this situation, husband and wife, that they take into account spousal benefits, survivorship benefits. So it may not be just as straightforward as just taking the primary worker, in this case it was him, and he was earning the most money, and make the decision just based on him. By the way, up in our banner, I'm going to offer to you the second chapter of my book. It's all devoted to Social Security, okay? So it'll give you some worksheets and frequently asked questions. So go up to the banner, hit the free chapter, and I'll get that to you as soon as you do. So there are a number of considerations here for Jane and Joe. What was their health status? They're fine. For life expectancy, we think we understand it. They're married, so we have to take into account the spousal benefits. And this is why we have 7 different calculators to try to figure out which is the best strategy for them as we coordinate not just the Social Security benefit, but also as it relates to their investment assets and their cash flow needs. For John and Jane, we decided on a strategy that for them would get them $54,000 a year. So now that we know they need $54,000, then we go to step 3. And step 3 is really key. Remember the old phrase, it's not what you earn, it's what you keep? Well, what you need, you have to account for another line item. Many people forget this. If Jane and Joe need $60,000 in their pocket to spend for their goals, they need to add in the impact of taxes. So they have to gross it up. So let's assume it's about a 20% net tax. So in essence, their $60,000 need means, in this scenario, as a general rule, that they need about $75,000 of gross income to net down to the $60,000 that they're looking for. So now we know they need $75,000 to be generated for income to net out the $60,000, and they're getting $54,000 from Social Security. That's a gross number. Again, taxes will be taken out. So now they need approximately $21,000 of gross income. And the question becomes, what's the best tax strategy in order to generate the extra $21,000? Now, Jane nor Joe had a desire to do any part-time income. They wanted to do some volunteering and spend a lot of time with the grandkids who were local. So we agreed that they would pull the money from the investment portfolio. Well, now we know that we have 2 buckets. There's $300,000 from the personal joint taxable account and another $500,000 from the retirement or the 401k account. So we have to be smart here. We also know that we have the required minimum distribution that we have to take into account at age 72. In other words, they have to start taking out approximately 3.5% of whatever the amount is in the retirement account at age 72. And we also know that if we take it all out of the retirement account, that'll probably mean that you'll pay more taxes on it than if you took a portion of it out of the personal joint account versus the retirement account. In other words, the personal account could have minimal tax exposure depending upon what's coming out and where it's coming from, Whereas on the retirement account, all of it will come out taxable at your tax rate. Now, here actually is a good lesson for those who were younger. If you have a Roth IRA, now you can take the money out tax-free. So the Roth is a wonderful tool to think about, but it may be, depending upon what your advisors say, your tax accountant or your financial advisor, you may want to think about a Roth IRA now, or the numbers may not make sense for you, but in either case, it's important to understand this is where a Roth may have helped. So what we did for Jane and Joe is now, since they're retiring at 66, we're going to generate the extra $21,000, but we're going to take $12,000 from the personal account, keeping the tax impact lower, and only $9,000 from the retirement account. And the whole $9,000 will be taxable. We've already accounted for that. So that's how for Jane and Joe, we took a look at their portfolio, figured out how much income they needed, what the tax ramifications would be, and from which buckets are they going to generate the income. Now, step 4 is really important. Now we've understood the cash flow need, right? And what's coming in for cash and where it's coming from. Now that we have that information, now we can take a look at the portfolio. Because now that we know that we have to generate $21,000 gross from the portfolio, that we know that we need to generate approximately just under 3% from the $800,000. 3% of $800,000 is $24,000. So just under 3%. And that's a good number because in the financial planning industry, we think of a cap of 4%. You don't really want to take out more than 4%. A lot of the studies have shown over the years that the good number not to surpass is 4%. So in this situation, we know we don't need to take on a lot of risk here. Now, let me step back for a moment. This is different than investing while you were working. While you were working, you were looking to generate that nest egg, accumulate the money. You were willing to take on risk and more risk. You knew time was on your side and you needed to generate that nest egg that would be your magical retirement number. Well, now we know for Jane and Joe, they've reached their number. That $800,000 at a 3% investment rate will get them what they need. So we know we can back into the personal investment benchmark. They need 3%, let's call it 3. Plus we need to take care of inflation, the impact of inflation looking forward. You can call that 2 or 3%. So overall, if you think of their personalized investment benchmark, instead of having to outperform the traditional benchmarks, the Dow, the EFA, and the NASDAQ, their benchmark is approximately 3% plus 2 or 3%. So they have to get somewhere between 5 or 6% over their lifetime, projected. Certainly no guarantees for any future performance. But that's the type of portfolio allocation we're looking for now, which meant for Jane and Joe, as we go into step 5, they're making some adjustments. Step 5 now is initiating the money management proper allocation. And we know from the cash flow and now the personalized investment benchmark, we only have to get somewhere in the vicinity of 5 to 6%. So we don't need to be in that 70 or 80% equity exposure, right? We can have a more moderate exposure. If their personalized investment benchmark, turned into like 8 or 9%, then that would be a different story. But for Jane and Joe, just a 5 to 6% total return looking forward. Again, we think on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very conservative, 10 being very aggressive, they could be pretty moderate. They could be like at a scale of 5 or 6. And for them, that meant they could bring their risk down in terms of what assets they had in their 401k. Now, I'm going to give you step 6 in just a moment, but I want you to stay on this because I want to give you a bonus. We actually have this in our book, a bonus chapter. Okay, so it's not just the 7-step process. There's also another conversation that really complements the financial conversations we're having now. I think it's really important for you to stay with it. So step 6 is what we call legacy planning. That's taking care of the surviving spouse, which oftentimes is overlooked with a traditional financial advisor who's just focused on money management, we find that taking care of the surviving spouse is one of the top two, if you will, concerns for the couple when they come in terms of if we knock him off first and she's still around, if they're of a similar age, then making sure that she's taken care of is really important. So making sure that your Social Security strategy is up to track. The pension, if you have a pension, making sure the survivorship is done properly. Making sure we understand what income she will need in this perspective. In terms of also protecting her legacy and her income, sometimes you look at life insurance, but in this circumstance, it wasn't pertinent to them. So we decided that having life insurance was not something they should invest in. Though taking a look at the long-term care insurance was very important as a part of the overall estate planning needs. Because if something happens, let's say to him, and it depletes the assets, if those assets are depleted, it may mean that if she survives, she may have less income in the future. So long-term care insurance is actually a very important part of the overall process of protecting your income. Then legacy planning also is, whether with regards to your kids or any charitable intent that you have, making sure that you do have the proper estate planning, wills, durable powers, healthcare proxy trusts. We don't do that, but we guide our clients to make sure that they're with the right estate planning attorney and that they're taken care of and dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. Number 7 is very simple, but it's often overlooked. Now that you've put all this time and effort into putting together your own retirement roadmap, we call it the yellow brick road, right? This whole step that you're going through, the journey that you're going through. Now that you've found some confidence that you are or are not on track and know what you need to do, for Jane and Joe, we found out they were on track. Now what you need to do, and what we do with our clients, is twice a year we have a formal meeting, whether it's over Zoom or phone or face-to-face, when we can all do that. We make sure that the assumptions are still good, find out if life has changed for them, whether their objectives have changed, what's happened in the markets, do any of the investments need to change? But very important to stay on this retirement roadmap and make sure it's current and reflects what your current assumptions are. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to give you the bonus right now. So the bonus one, the one conversation we have with our clients, I've been doing this for over 30 years now. A successful retirement is not driven just by cash flow or the amount of money that you have. It's also about getting fulfilled and being rewarded. And one of the biggest conversations we have with our clients, and one of the biggest fears they have, is now that I've given up work, what do I do with the rest of my life? This is a very big conversation, and I tell all of my clients to make sure well in advance, a year, 2, 3 years in advance of retirement, that the couple has a conversation together. They talk about what retirement might look like. How are they going to fill their time? How are he and she going to spend their time, maybe separately and together? What is it going to mean? How are they going to get fulfilled? Is it with the grandkids? Is it volunteering? Is it going or consulting? Whatever it is, you've got to figure out how to replace that business culture that was so important to you then. Now you've got a whole new culture that you have to deal with. That is as important to deal with as your finances. And if you want to learn more about it, check out our playlist.